everybody. Let's try this again. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. That's the energy that I'm talking about because, all right, I can be biased. This is the best panel that you're going to participate in all day. So yeah, that's the energy I want. That's the energy I want. First off, thank you so very much for joining us here in Puerto Rico at our 5th annual gathering of the Festival of the Diaspora. I am Jevin Hodge, and I have the distinctive honor to serve as the chairman of the board of directors here. So thank you so very much for investing, believing, supporting, getting involved, connecting, co-creating, collaborating with other inspirational change makers that are doing the work on the ground. And this panel here today, like I said, is the best panel you're going to be part of because we're going to have a conversation around the lack of access and knowledge to capital in the real estate space. And so, this panel is titled Bridging the Gap, Access to Knowledge and Capital. I'm here joined by two incredibly distinctive professionals that are leading their respective spaces. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves and talk. So I want you all to, Anitra and Eddy, please introduce yourselves. Tell your story, how we got here. We got 45 minutes and a lot of road to unpack, and I really want the audience to understand the incredibleness that you bring to the table. And so please have some questions. Be ready this is going to be a collaborative conversation filled with knowledge and filled with pathways for real lasting solutions. So I'm going to turn it over to my panelists here, Mr. Eddy Benoit. Thank you, Eddy, for your leadership and all that you are doing to serve our community.
Thank you, Jevin. But first, I'll pass it over to Anitra. Ladies first. Okay.
I love it.
Thank you, Eddy, such a gentleman. Good morning. My name is Anitra Androh. I'm a partner at the law firm of Polsinelli, PC. We're a national firm of about 1,200 attorneys. And I have been representing developers and investors for over 25 years. I do transactions all over the country. I like to focus on affordable housing and community impact projects, particularly projects that are in, Black and brown communities. For my story, I was talking with Eddy last night and said when I was in law school, real estate was the furthest thing from my line. If you had told me when I was in law school I was going to be a real estate attorney, I would have looked at you like you were crazy. I don't know how they teach real estate law now, but back then, the only thing they talked about was adverse possession and the rule against perpetuities. And I'm from the south side of Chicago. We don't let anybody adverse possess anything that we own. So I could not even wrap my head around the concept. And then I was like, okay, well, that's great. And maybe this happens in rural areas, but not in the city. So I just kind of checked out of that class. But as God would have it, I went from believing I was going to be an international human rights attorney, fighting for the rights of women and children in Black and brown countries. Now I'm working with great folks like Eddy to better communities for Black and brown folks right here in our country. So that's just a brief synopsis of my story, and I'll hand it over to Eddy.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. My name is Eddy Benoit. I'm the founder and CEO of the Benoit Group. We're headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. So we're in the commercial real estate development business and vertically integrated. So we develop, own, and manage our own assets throughout the Southeast and in the Midwest. So the business that we're in actually focuses a lot on affordable housing, affordable mixed income housing, mixed use developments that are anchored by multifamily developments. We really target a lot of public-private partnerships, and where we're engaging municipalities, nonprofits, and also philanthropic enthusiasts related to who are interested in transformation in certain areas that are difficult to develop or areas that are focused on gentrification. So our business gets very complicated. We deal a lot with the federal government, state government, and again, municipal government in what we do. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, born and partially raised there. And so development is something that I was interested in since I was a little kid. I was always fascinated by the Manhattan. Being born and raised in Brooklyn, it was just always interesting to me that you had to cross a bridge to go to a place that the world actually visited. And so therefore, I always wanted to be part of building and creating new opportunities, new environments, or at least being part of that. And so I decided that that was the journey, the pathway that I would focus in. But because I was born African American, first generation, my parents were first generation immigrants coming into the United States, I never knew that there were barriers as far as the, me entering into the real estate development industry. I thought that I could actually, just get a degree in real estate development just to find out that the easiest path for me was to go either into engineering or construction management and work more adjacent to the real estate development industry. And so as I pursued my career in the business, I actually had to start there. I've worked for one of the largest general contractors in the country, Skanska, that recruited me out of University of Florida to Atlanta about 34 years ago. And that's how I started my journey until I started working for a development company and eventually got into partnership. And now we have the Benoit Group, which we formed about 16 years ago when my partners and I, separated.
Well, I want to first start by saying thank you both for your leadership and being on the front lines in our communities. And we're going to really dive into what that means when you talk about access to affordable housing, when you talk about access to workforce housing, and when you talk about the critical need in our communities for the developments that you all are all working on and how you two work in tandem with one another. But before we get into that, what I really want us to start with, and Eddy, you touched on this in your intro, but the barriers for entry. When you look around the table, I'm confident that both of y'all don't see people who look like you. And I would love for you to start unpacking, why is it so hard for Black and brown young people to get involved in this space? Do you want to kick us off, Eddy?
First of all, I can't do what I do without people like Anitra as our attorneys. And it's always refreshing to have somebody that looks like me on the other side. When I mean the other side, really dealing with all of the assessing the risk that we're going into, because that's pretty much the role from an attorney standpoint, and just taking those late calls at night and those early calls in the morning or on the weekends when we're second guessing situations and we're having very, very tough discussions that are very colorful sometimes. Okay? Yeah, I just don't understand what goes on between the owners, the principals, and the attorneys, but at the same time, that creates a bond and a mutual respect that over time, we could finish each other's sentences. She already knows what I'm thinking about and anticipates, that's not gonna happen. And so that is refreshing to have that kind of relationship with your attorney and how invaluable that attorney is, not just about just billing time. That person becomes really critical to your operation. But as it relates to just access, I'm gonna give you just a little bit of stats. Anybody in here can tell me how many private real estate development companies exist in the United States? Just take a wild guess. 10,000. Anybody else? Come on now, wake up. It's 10:30. 500. 100,000. Who said that? I was just joking. But no, she's the closest. There's about 112,000. Okay, private real estate. Yeah, you go. All right now. Now we're talking. There we go. Did y'all get that on? There's about 112,000 plus or minus, all right? So, but another question is, how many Black and brown private real estate development companies do you think exist out here?
Less than 1%.
Anybody else?
I'll say less than 1%.
1%. 1%? 10%? Okay. Anybody else? 3%. All right. I mean, let's go from 1 to 100, right? It's actually, everybody it's below 1%. It's actually 0.4%. There's under 400. That's right, 500. It's about under 450. And so, yeah, it's serious. All right, now, hey, you got to bow. You got to bow. Exactly. So there's about under 500, and that alone hopefully will help frame this conversation. 100-some thousand companies, private companies in the U.S., under 500 are black, companies. But even in those 450 to 500 companies, none of them make over $50 million in revenue, annual revenue. And none of them have pierced the top tier. Okay? Well, and so the issue is that most who are entering the business have a few hurdles that they have to overcome. Okay, that are pretty much the same for every company. Some may have others, but the first thing is just the fact that they lack a balance sheet. They have very low capital, and they don't have enough collateral. So both of which is what, for those who are accountants in this room, that show up on your balance sheet. The balance sheets are very, very weak. Some also have credit issues, okay, as far as what their credit score is concerned, from a Beacon score standpoint. They have credit issues. The other part is the fact that they have more stringent underwriting because they're newbies in the business, all right? So what may be acceptable for one group, they're asking them, they have higher requirements for the smaller, new, black, led companies. The other part is that they view them as a higher risk from a perception standpoint. And then you have other issues related to the fact that they don't have the same network access, professional networks. And so their professional networks are a lot smaller, which means they don't see also the same representation of African Americans than these private equity, firms, those venture, capital firms, where there could be some type of relationship lending, relationship investment in place. So I can go on, but those are usually the dominant issues that black companies face when they're trying to enter this business. So therefore, even if they have a great deal, even though they have the bandwidth from a intellectual capacity standpoint to move forward with the project, by the time they get to underwriting, they're asked to bring in a larger company, okay? Usually it's maybe a white-owned company to lead the project, and they have to take, second chair to that deal in order for it to move forward. I'll pass it on.
I think that's the unfortunate conversation that I have to have with a number of, I represent, the full gamut, very large institutional developers and investors, as well as some of the folks that are in that group of the 450 that Eddy was talking about. And there's nothing more heartbreaking when you're working with a group that has put together an amazing project. The pro forma works, they know what they're doing, and then when they go to get the financing, they're told you have to bring in this majority developer, and quite frankly, that's going to come in and rape and pillage because they know they're needed. And so someone or a group that has spent 5 years or so, they may have already acquired the land. They've entitled it. They've gone through the hardship, as I say, the hard part, right? The really hard part of, getting whatever municipality or jurisdiction to approve the project. They've already spent sometimes millions of dollars to get to that point. And then the bank comes in and says, we are just randomly deciding we're going to increase your liquidity requirement. And had they not spent the money to get there, they probably would have had the liquidity, right? And so because I deal with the same banks and investors on a regular basis, I'm like, this, in my mind, I'm like, this deal looks a hell of a lot better than the deal that you just okayed last week and didn't have the same requirements. And so those are the subtleties that, we encounter And it becomes hard as an attorney who will sit at the table from the exact same bank, exact same officers, and see an identical deal get underwritten and approved differently. And I know the only difference is because they're a developer of color, right? And so it becomes a chicken or the egg. And one of the other things where they try to raise is, well, you don't quite have the resume yet. This is only your second deal. Well, if they can never get a deal done, how do they get the resume? And so it's a very circular argument that how am I going to get the resume to get over the hurdle if I can never get the deal done because I can't get the capital? And so those are just some of the things that I think contribute to why it's so difficult for us to be in this space.
So, takeaway number one, the system is structurally working against, and as we all have experienced, and we all do experience every single day, the system is structurally working against black and brown developers in every aspect of the deal. Access to capital, liquidity requirements, deal requirements, resume. Takeaway number two that I heard, Benoit Group will be the first black-owned real estate company that will break through that top tier. Be first. So you talk about some of what is happening in the environment every single day. Can we shift the tone of the conversation just a little bit? And Anitra, I'm going to start with you because I specifically want to talk about it from the educational standpoint, and both of you all. But do we have the educational pipelines to develop the future talent of breaking into this space, right? Do we, are we seeing the JD programs or the BA programs, the bachelor's programs that are grooming and preparing our young black and brown leaders to be prepared to be leaders in this space? What does it look like when you're going through law school, when you're going through undergrad? And then subsequently, same question for you, Eddy. What are the educational programs looking like on college campuses? Do we have HBCU programs that are specifically focused in real estate development and real estate management at our premier institutions that are educating our communities of color, or are they only at PWIs? Walk us through what the educational landscape looks like, and I'm going to start with Anitra.
Sure. I strongly believe, as I sit with, I'm on a lot of boards, real estate boards, industry boards, as well as, also for lawyers, right? And one of the things that we are constantly trying to figure out is how to get, more people of color, I'll be honest, more black folks, to be real estate attorneys. And what we have concluded is that law school is not soon enough, right? And then I think about it even further, and I said, well, I know when I started undergrad, and I didn't have the luxury to find myself. A lot of us, our parents say, if they can, you got 4 years to get in and get out. If you have a scholarship, you have 4 years to get in and get out. And so we don't have the luxury to meander through college and figure out our lives. We kind of walk through the door, most of us, due to a myriad of reasons. We have to walk through the door knowing what we're going to do. And so if we don't know about I didn't know about real estate. My parents owned their home and that was about it, right? They're in their 80s and that was an accomplishment for that time period, just to own their home. We didn't talk about real estate investing because, that's just not in our family. So, I think we almost need to start at the high school level. Because when you come in go into college, a lot of people that start in real estate backgrounds are either going into business school, their finance, their accounting, they might even go into business or into a real estate program. But those are different colleges or schools within the college. And so if you come in over here, you might waste a year that you don't have to waste or to pivot. And so if you don't know about real estate before you hit that college campus, you're already behind. And so I don't know how we even would start having, I know some high schools are starting to have financial literacy courses, some progressive, jurisdictions. But talking about real estate really needs to start at high school so that if the interest is there, kids know okay, when I go to college, if I'm going to pursue a real estate professional career, I need to start probably in the business school. You know, starting off, you know, with a psychology degree, trying to pivot into real estate is going to be hard because you're listening some of the fundamentals that your white counterparts, number one, because they've been listening to parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles talk about real estate forever. And they started out in the, you know, with that background. And so breaking in into the industry, if you've gotten in, nothing wrong with it. I have a liberal arts background, so I'm not knocking it. But if that's where you're starting and you decide I want to, you know, be a developer, I want to be the next Eddy, but I have a degree in psychology, you just made the hurdle that much harder for yourself.
Yeah, I definitely echo everything you just said, Anitra. And I'll just take another angle here and talk about just from a HBCU standpoint. How many in here attended HBCUs, either undergrad or grad? Show your hands proudly. Come on now. Yeah. How many attended PWIs? Okay. So there's about 100 to 101 HBCUs that are accredited, you know, currently. And how many HBCUs do you think actually offer real estate development, real estate science, undergrad and graduate programs? Five?
Maybe three.
Three? Two more? Zero. Who said zero? You're actually right. Zero. Zero. There's only one that actually, well, has a program from a master's standpoint, but it's an MBA program with a concentration, again, dealing with, you know, program adjacency in real estate development or real estate finance or something like that, and that's North Carolina Central University. Okay, so really zero. You can't get not an undergraduate nor a graduate program at any one of the accredited HBCUs. So that just cancels any opportunity for students that are attending HBCUs right now from an undergraduate and graduate level to understand the real estate career tree. Okay? For most of our children, from high school to college, for most adults, when they hear the word real estate, they think of what? Hey, getting a sales license in 30 to 60 days, 90 days, whatever, online. Or you can attend a class in person, selling homes, flipping homes, and making money. It's only upside. Everybody makes money in real estate. People who are tired of their current careers are like, well, I'm going into real estate, okay? Because there's a lot of money to be made there, all right? But there's no money to be lost, all right? So we hear that all day, every day. I'm sure every single one of you have been in those types of conversations with your friends and families or coworkers, okay, that are frustrated with what they're doing, whereby real estate development is a true science, all right? Just like Anitra said, you need to have the prerequisites, undergrad, finance, business, some type of degree that actually can lead you into a master's program. And there are programs, certain universities where you do have both a JD and a Master of Real Estate Science. I know University of Florida has one. And so therefore, people like an Anitra can be an attorney, but also, you know, master in the real estate, you know, finance side, and ultimately come out and be a real estate attorney, be the best real estate attorney that can be. But not understanding what the real estate career opportunity tree looks like is a big issue, because black or brown, you know, just college students or graduates, they don't understand all the different opportunities, whether it's in hotel, hospitality, whether it's in multifamily, and whether it's in student housing, whether it's in affordable housing, whether it's in independent senior living or assisted living, whether it's in industrial, commercial retail, office. There's so many different subsets of these main components that I just mentioned. Or do you go into the lending side? Do you work for a bank? Do you work for a pension fund? Do you work for the capital markets as far as private equity? Do you go into property management or asset management? You see, I just kind of just ran down just a few different careers, all of which are niche opportunities to actually create full careers and do extremely well and be part of the real estate industry. And so therefore, these HBCUs, they don't have these programs because of a few hurdles that they have to overcome. Number one, the institutions that have programs, undergraduate programs in real estate, finance or science or development, they have industry donors. They create these advisory groups that are represented by different companies. People like myself are on their advisory groups, and we actually donate money to the college for the program. You have large donors that support the school. They name the program. They get the naming rights, okay? And they'll fund a few $1 million for the program. They get all kinds of support in order to have a real estate finance program within the College of Business, because it is a niche, real focused type of degree. And the other part is the fact that they also have lack of access to faculty that can teach these classes. It's just the truth. And so when you start dealing with some of those hurdles, it makes it even very difficult for a very focused type of degree for them to get the access to the capital and also the faculty to actually teach these programs, and where they can get enough students to make it where it is sustainable, to go through the entire curriculum and be able to offer a degree.
So let me paint a visual for everybody now. As we are navigating this conversation, we're fulfilling different pieces of the loop. The next section that we understand that there are systemic barriers when you're operating in this space. The next section of the loop is that there are institutional systemic barriers in developing the pipeline for leaders in this space. And it's not just that we don't have a pipeline of young people that are excited and passionate about this topic. It's the fact that we do not have the resources, the partners, institutional capital, and if unfortunately, if you're an HBCU or a smaller college, and you have to prioritize your programs, you're going to prioritize your med school over, a real estate legal degree. You're going to prioritize your liberal arts degrees over X, Y, and Z. And so you're seeing, and thank you so much for eloquently doing this, of unpacking the various pieces of the loop. Before we get to the next section of the loop here, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge one of our sponsors in the room, the National Black Empowerment Council, Mr. Darius Jones. Thank you for your leadership and all that you're doing to partner with the Festival of the Diasporic. And as a former member of the Arizona House of Representatives and has a mother who is on the Tempe City Council, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the people who have served this country. We have the Honorable Richard St. Paul, former council member. Thank you for your leadership and all that you have done here as well. And then we have the highest ranking law enforcement official in the state of Arizona, the Colonel of Arizona Department of Public Safety and Director, Cabinet Member for the Governor of Arizona, Mr. Jeffrey Glover. Thank you for your leadership. And so jumping back into conversation here, we're going to go back now talking about the operating environment for individuals. Let's go back to the 450-ish real estate development firms. Access to capital. Is it hard? Do they have it? Where is it coming from? How do they get it? What does it look like? Because we know that as we're talking about this space, access to capital is the most critical component. And Anitra, you talked about the process, the underwriting process, and how hard it is to have capital lend it to you. And ladies and gentlemen, I know we glossed over this point, but this is such a significant point about the Benoit Group that we have to highlight. They are vertically integrated. So what that means is, in layman's terms, they are building their assets, they are leading their assets, they are managing their assets, and they are leveraging their assets. By the fact that they're vertically integrated, they are leveraging their resources to do this, which is so critically important. And Eddie, not to put you on the spot here, how many other firms that have leaders that look like you are vertically integrated like you?
In the country right now, based on what other lenders told me, there's definitely less than seven, 8 of us.
You hear that?
At the scale that we're on.
So there's 112,000 real estate development firms in the country. Less than 0.5% is led by black and brown people, about 450 of those firms. Okay? And you're telling me less than 10 of them are vertically integrated. You see the significance of that? Okay, now let's talk about capital. I just threw out a bunch of questions about capital, and now it's time for us to unpack that next wheel, that next spoke in the wheel.
So access to capital is kind of like the Achilles heel for every black-owned development company, black and brown. I could even say that, stretch it there, because it is just so difficult. We talked about some of the hurdles that you have to overcome. But as I say that, we've been doing deals over the past 16 years, and we continue to do more deals. And some of my other peers in the industry are doing, their projects. Even though you have to deal with some of the higher requirements, sometimes you're blindsided with the changes in liquidity requirements as you get towards the closing table. It's just what it is. This is not the business for everybody. It's not for the faint of heart. You don't get to go home and cry and say, oh, they did me wrong. You just have to not take no for an answer. Right, Anitra? If we took no for an answer, you tell me no 10 times, I'm going to ask you again the next day until we get to a resolution, especially if I feel as though that this is a very unusual ask. And how can I get you comfortable? Because obviously you feel uncomfortable with our sponsorship and the project. So first I need to understand, do you like the deal? Because if there's nothing wrong with the deal, now it's a matter of us as the sponsor. So how can we get you comfortable based on the risk? You remember I talked about the risk perception? And that's real. And that is based on how somebody feels when they come out of a committee meeting. And they tell you the deal is great, thumbs up, but guess what? They want you to double your liquidity to get the deal done. And you're like, hey, we're at the eve of the closing. You just asked me, and it happens. So just understand, not only do you face and have we faced those challenges when we were a lot smaller company at the infancy stage of the company in 2010, but we even have those challenges today based on our size. They're just greater challenges, whereby now it's just a matter of, yes, we know you have the bandwidth both from a human capital, intellectual capital, and capital, but we just want to see more capital because you're doing too much. Okay? And those are the words that we're told. But at the same time, they tell us you're doing too much. They're like, we'd love to do your next deals. Well, how can I actually have pipeline for you to invest in, but you're telling me I'm doing too much? And you want me to have a whole lot more liquidity sitting here from a covenant standpoint, because that just makes you feel good. It doesn't make the deal any better. It has nothing to do with our experience and what we've been able to accomplish. And those are some of the realities that smaller development companies face and even larger development companies face. It never stops. It never stops. And so it is important to create, at least to overcome the credibility hurdle early on. And what I tell young, new developers that are looking to scale, you need to make sure that you're partnering with lenders and equity partners that are very well known, that are part of the Fortune 500, 100, the top companies, because they help you overcome the credibility hurdle. Because when that next lender looks at the fact that oh, you've been doing deals with the J.P. Morgans of the world, with the Raymond James of the world, with the PNC banks, all the big ones. You're like, well, if they're willing to take risks with you, and they've done multiple deals, which are part of your real estate owned assets, then why shouldn't they? All right, so same thing. If you're smaller, you don't have that much experience, why not find your partners early? Find another development partner, black or white, that could actually help you overcome some of these challenges and learn the business with them until you're ready to go out on your own. Don't feel as though that you have to go out on your own because you just found your first deal on your own. You're not ready. And there's going to be so many headwinds that are going to keep you from being able to advance the needle or even bring that project to fruition.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what you said, Eddie, I've had a number of I would say, emerging developer clients that, I had to kind of turn into a mother on them and say, do you want 100% of nothing? Or do you want 50% of something, right? The headwinds that you talked about are very real, particularly if it's their first or second deal. And I know the mentality of developers because I've been working with them for a very long time. And you love a deal. It's your baby. And the concept of bringing someone to the table who may now have input, it's difficult to digest. But the credibility that, coming to Eddy or another like-minded developer who is trying to partner with you to help you succeed because he has credibility, right? But there's this innate resistance to that. And, I said, I can't tell you what to do, but what I will tell you is that you have a higher probability of success partnering with someone who's also invested in your success because they're your partner. Because the banks will change their mind in a heartbeat. Your private equity may become more expensive overnight. And those expenses could eat up, the profitability of your project. So you can go it alone if you like and say, yes, I did it. But the whole point of doing this is to make some money. I'm not saying we're greedy, but you've done a deal and you could still be in debt because you didn't want to venture with someone. And the banks, when it comes to us, it can be the day before closing. We've all been there. And they're like...
Can I give a perspective from the banking side? I did this for like 15 years. I want to just give the reality of the other side, just for Eddy to understand, at the level of Eddy. So I spent 16 years at HSBC, right? And so they had me take the diversity job 13 years in, right? And so my mentor was the head of commercial real estate. So let me just specifically for Eddy. We didn't know a lot of Eddies, right? And the person who was Don Peoples back in the days, because Don was very public.
Yes.
If we did a deal for Eddy and that deal went bad, we would have to do 7 deals to make that up. So I just want to give you a perspective on the other side. So the risk is not, we don't want to do a deal with Eddy. It's like, all right, the other non-Eddies are used to doing those deals, and the risk, you say risk, we're comfortable because they've done those deals. If I did a deal with Eddy, I've never done a deal with a black developer. My job is saying, you need to meet an Eddy, and for Eddy's case, it was a Don Peoples, right, before the market crash. It was getting them to just say that we didn't know then, we didn't have black friends, so it was them getting comfortable saying, there's a black developer doing this type of deal, but to take the risk of saying, I'm going to do it with Eddy, but the back of my mind is like, Eddy's deal was bad, and if you do 6 more of those deals, so I just want to give you a perspective, like, it's not like we didn't want to do a deal with Eddy. The risk was like, y'all don't know, if a lending deal was bad, I got to do 5 more to make up, because my bonus was on the line. Eddy's deal was bad. So
I'll say, I hear you.
The bank's perspective of why I didn't do deals.
We hear you, but we understand across the board, as with everything, we don't get a rebuttable presumption, right? If I mess up as a lawyer, I'll probably never get another client, right? So we're human, we're imperfect. But unfortunately, in particular in this space, we're not allowed to make mistakes. That's why we say we can't fail. Because if we fail, to your point, every black real estate attorney, every potential developer that looks like Eddy is going to, we will become the case scenario where it's like, well, you remember the failed deal, right? And so that is the intangible burden that we carry. In addition to everything else is we can't mess up. We can't make a mistake. Our deals can't fail. I have clients right now that have had to sell homes because they're like, they needed the personal homes, their residences, to float a deal because it can't go bad, right? It's everything that could go wrong went wrong. And it was a deal that happened during COVID. Who saw that coming, right? You know, we had deadlines that we couldn't meet because we couldn't get certificates of occupancy, because we couldn't, get certificates of occupancy because we had supply chain issues. We couldn't get stoves and refrigerators. You can't get a C of O until you have that. We had to extend the construction loan, which is, as I can tell you, extremely painful. Nobody, foresaw that, but the deal couldn't fail. And those are the sacrifices that they have to make so that, there isn't that stigma. And that's just, we have to, as we say, we have to tough it out. We have to figure it out because we're not allowed to fail. Plain and simple.
Weren't John People's investments, my understanding is that he had a very niche type of investments. So one of his number twos was one of my mentors. And so my understanding is that he focused on historical projects and historical preservation to some degree versus investing in affordable housing projects, which seem like they would be more of a guarantee in some ways versus the type of work that John Peoples was doing. So I'm just curious about if the type of development that you're doing makes a difference in terms of feeling like this project can be fully completed.
I'm going to respond to Reggie first. Just want to make sure
Please.
we're going on.
We got about 4 more minutes.
Yeah, this is great. With Reggie, and I get what you're saying, and it's real, especially from a production standpoint, working with the bank or any lender, per se. But I will go back to the statistics. In the real estate lending department, the private equity department, all the deals, if you get 100 deals, you might have about a very small percentage of them that are proposed by black companies. The failures of the 95 or plus percent deals are by other companies that are non-black, and they fail too.
Yes.
They fail miserably. I know very well. Okay, and you got to do 7 to 10 more deals in order to fix it. And the banks will figure out how to restructure them before they foreclose. Because the last thing you want is for a developer to turn over the keys to you. All right? So you're going to work with those developers until they come to a resolution. So let's just be very clear. Unfortunately, when you do have a person like yourself who is actually interacting with other black developers, you're penalized for every time there's a failure, which is unfair.
Yes.
But then your counterparts in that same bank are not penalized because it's expected that there's going to be some attrition in the success rate of the projects that are being underwritten. And so for a person who's been in the business for about 34 years, one thing that I do know, I came into business towards the end of a recession. I've seen a great recession and all other cyclical financial changes in the market over those almost 3.5 decades. One thing I've not seen is that bad loans are never made in bad times. They're only made in good times. Okay? And during the good times, there's about, we just said, almost 99+% of developers that are benefiting from those transactions that are being underwritten. So I'll let you fill in the blanks.
But, well, here, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to say that y'all need to catch Eddy and Anitra outside.
Can I just say one
You
thing?
can't. Only because of you.
Okay. I have just been fuming over here, right? So I have a billionaire mentor here, and there's something that sticks in my mind that he told me. We were talking about finance, and he said, "Be your own bank." So I want to get to the root of
You need to buy land. So if I were going to do anything, it would be be okay and buy land. That's all.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, just post check real. Yeah, you can applaud that. That's something to applaud. So, just post check real quick. This is the best panel.
Yes.
Wait. Is this the best panel? All right, that's what I thought. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to give these two one sentence to close out, call to action, words of wisdom, and then what we're going to do is turn around. We're going to do the Oprah style photo, and then I'm going to release everybody, okay? All right, so one sentence, close it out. However, paper, rock, scissors, who wants to go first?
I would just say, and particularly in this space, we just need to be more collaborative. I think we can go further together, and we can go further and be stronger together, quite frankly. Yeah.
Two things. One, our community banks need to show more leniency in the underwriting. They're typically the ones that, unfortunately, will say no to us, okay? So the underwriting there needs to be more lenient in order to allow, again, emerging developers to break through in this industry. Number two, sharing the knowledge. The knowledge is important to share. This is one of the reasons why about 3+ years ago, I decided to actually go on YouTube. I was a zero social media guy, and I started a Shape the Deal show on YouTube. And it's not just advertising, because I just couldn't reach as many people from a mentorship standpoint. And by doing that, I have thousands of people that are able to feed into the information that I'm sharing, but not just Eddy Benoit, but all the guests that I interview, and for them to hear their story, what they're doing, and understand some, a little bit more in depth, the real estate dynamics. And so therefore, we need to continue to do that, because we just talked about the fact that none of these HBCUs are actually offering that type of knowledge.
All right. Well, let's do this. Give them a round of applause, please. Look them up on LinkedIn, Anitra and Dola on LinkedIn, Eddy Benoit, Shape the Deal, and I'm at Jevin Hodge across all platforms. Y'all, here, let's do this real quick. Y'all ready?